For my capstone project, I've decided to very loosely recreate a 2-page spread from the medieval textbook. I mean it when I say loosely. I take a lot of creative freedoms here. While I am using very contemporary methods to do this, a digital program, namely Procreate, most medieval textbooks are made using specifically tainted animal skin, goat or sheep. Paper was not brought into wide use in Europe until around 1450. These can take months upon months for scribes to make, as a lot of meticulous detail is put into them. Textura script is the name of the most common form of calligraphy writing in the Middle Ages. I attempt to recreate this style of writing here with the modern English alphabet. These letters are honest to God so tedious to write, and I have so much respect for the scribes who wrote them with ink and sometimes lead point. These textbooks are normally transcribed in Latin. Theological works were by far the dominant form of literature made during this time. This is mostly because these books were so time-consuming to create, so the only people who had time to make them were artists and scribes sponsored by the church, specifically the Catholic Church. Monasteries were central places for learning during this time, as there were no public schools like we have today back then. If you wanted schooling, you would either have to be tutored at home, which was a privilege only afforded to the nobles at the time, or be sent to an ecclesiastical school, which was also not an option for most peasants. I'm not too good at drawing, so my art is a bit simpler than what these scribes would be doing. I am trying to keep the religion. The words I've transcribed I've taken from an old hymn, reinvented by Kristen Hayter. That's what the lyrics specifically are, is her version of it. Here I'm moving on to the more drawing portion of it as I finish the text. Here I finished the first page, so now I'm moving on to the second, where I'm going to do a lot more drawing. The most common thing these textbooks would portray would be the saints, of course, because most were theological works and most would be done by the Catholic. I don't go into nearly as much detail as this page has on it, but I try to replicate as much as possible, because unfortunately I am not sponsored by a church and I do not have months of time to do this. And the little things that I did do, it took me a lot of time. These branches especially, trying to get them in an order where they look nice and where they're not taking up too much space, but they're still taking up a lot. I really underestimated how much detail goes into these like little things. While the page I'm drawing from has animals at the bottom, I am not good at drawing animals, so instead I'm recreating a little portion of the Passion of Christ, so I can still keep that religious theme, but I don't have to draw any animals. I draw holly berries here because they symbolize the blood of Christ, and then I also draw a wine chalice because wine is also the blood of Christ, of course, in the Catholic faith. Textbooks back then were not called textbooks, they were called codex, and I actually learned that the plural form of it is not codexes, it's codices, which understandably does sound a lot nicer, but it sounds like a different word to me. While modern books use a binding method where many sheets of paper are sewed together and a cover is wrapped around the book to hide the binding, medieval manuscripts were bound by having signatures sewn together on cords of leather thongs for support. Then the cords would be woven through openings carved in the front and back covers and held in place using animal glue. Once dry, it would be covered in leather or fabric. And the books would actually not stay closed like this, so they'd have to use metal straps and like heavy wood boards to keep the books closed. I am not too good at drawing, so my art is a quite bit simpler than what these scribes would be doing. I'm trying to keep the religious theme strong, even though some of the works I'm referencing are far in the future from these textbooks. I did not want to copy the spread exactly, but I still wanted to keep the main theological elements. And here is the finished thing put together into like one spread. I know it's not on actual paper, it's on a digital work, but I think I did pretty well. I like it, and it was a really fun experience doing this, even though it was very tedious writing all the letters and doing all the little detail. I had a lot of fun.